Welcome everyone. Welcome to Neutral Lounge, a podcast about video games and computer technology. I'm your host Joel, and with me is my co-host Alex. Together, we make up the Neutral Lounge. In this episode, we talk about Computex 2021, Epic vs Apple, Risc CPUs and how it changes gaming. Is PlayStation turning a corner this generation? Our anticipated games of 2021 and Xbox, is it for the gamers? Without further ado, let's talk tech. Hey Al, so welcome back to
Joe.
yet another Neutral Lounge. So look, the weather's super stellar in London.
Yep.
Sun's back out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling better.
Yep.
All things considered.
Yep.
How's it going on your end? You're back in
Yeah,
London, right?
Back in London. Definitely got my good dose of vitamin D. Caught up with some friends. Had my first vaccine dose kind of earlier in the week. Not many side effects. And just doing, just general things, keeping safe, taking lateral flow tests and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, things are improving.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've basically done my first jab and waiting for the second jab end of June, June 30th. So, looking forward to getting that out of the way. Things are opening up now, so, I'm able to see a bit more people.
Yeah.
Saw my parents for the first time since last August. In the flesh, of course.
Yeah.
So that that was really nice, and obviously seeing a few friends here and there. I don't know about getting back to normality. It's definitely improving.
Yeah.
I mean, things are much improved in the UK. Places like India, maybe less so. But that's the nature of the world at the moment. We can only, keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Al, I was like contemplating our last podcast, and I really enjoyed doing the sections on our favourite games and genres.
Yeah.
But my feeling on that there's just too much of it. There's too many games. We've got too much of a history with these games
Yeah.
and different platforms that really trying to fit that into one podcast is nigh impossible. So I was
Yeah.
thinking that maybe at a later date we could basically just drill in and basically get specific. Maybe kind of just talk about, pick a genre. Pick a genre like a shooter or first-person shooter or platform genre, and just kind of like get into the details of that, or pick a specific platform, and really talk about the whys. Really,
Yeah. Yeah.
why the games, why the game on that particular platform, that sort of thing. And another item to maybe kind of consider is maybe some corrections and omissions. I do find that sometimes, when the heat of battle or the conversation, that we've given not an entirely accurate piece of information, and maybe that needs to be acknowledged at a later date, and to say, look, let's hold our hands up and say, okay, that wasn't completely accurate. What we meant was this, or the piece of information we were given should have said this, and I
Yeah.
think that
Yeah.
might be interesting to do.
Yeah. We should. Yeah. Definitely.
Okay, so without further ado, let's move on to our first topic. So what do we want to talk about right now? Well, Computex 2021 has just, I think, started. It feels like we're in the midst of that. I think the keynotes are being given by some of the, I'd call them the big three, AMD,
Yeah.
Nvidia, and Intel. And this is a first for me. And it's a first because I'm probably going to end up saying, well, who won Computex 2021? And usually,
Yeah.
that nonsense you reserve for E3, really. It's just this throwaway. But obviously the keynotes were given by the individual companies, and I kind of want to go into each kind of like keynote and just basically look at the information we were given, some of the hot news, or lack of hot news, I should say, in some cases,
Yeah.
and get into the weeds of that. Let's start off with Let's start off with AMD.
Yeah.
So, just a summary of what AMD, delivered in their keynote. First point, they talked about APUs that were going
Hmm.
out for the DIY market, based on Zen 3 with integrated Vega graphics, but with a quite a massive 2 gigahertz clock. They
Yep.
also talked about 6000 series laptop graphics,
Hmm. Hmm.
6800M, 6700M, and 6600M.
Yep. 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 Yep.
They talked about AMD Advantage laptops, and I did say, I think in a previous podcast, that it would get interesting once we got AMD graphics with AMD
Yep.
CPUs, and it has. They also basically outed FSR,
Yep. Yep.
their alternative. I'm not going to call it, a direct like-for-like competitor, but certainly their alternative to DLSS.
Yep.
And actually, that basically going to be available on the 22nd of June. So, in my view, a lot sooner than I thought it was going to be, based on other interviews I kind of had heard.
Mm.
Interestingly, works with a breadth of graphics cards, not just AMD graphics cards.
Yep.
And
Yep.
last but certainly not least, Vcache, which I think is V for vertical. It's this basically 3D stacking technology, packaging technology, and basically they've got prototypes running based on the latest kind of Ryzen chips.
Yep. Yep.
That looked, certainly very, very impressive. Let's get into this. I mean,
Mm.
APU wise, I don't think there's really a lot to talk about here. I think these APUs were already with the OEMs and the pre-built. Great that they're available for the DIY market.
Yep.
Certainly good considering the market as it stands, where it's more or less impossible to get a decent graphics card for a fair price.
Yep. Yep.
Likewise for the CPUs. So that's out. Now where it becomes interesting is finally we've got these 6000 series laptop graphics, these RDNA laptop graphics chips,
Yep. 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 Yep.
and I think that's where it's going to get interesting. Connected to that, AMD Advantage laptops,
Yep.
yeah, which
Yep.
I think really allows some of these laptops to behave very much like the new generation of consoles, with
Yeah.
Smart Shift and SAM and all AMD parts. It's not quite
Yep.
an APU, but with those bells and whistles, it's kind of behaving like an APU. I don't know what you think about that, Al.
Yeah. And I think we could. I think we could see it, right? I think that was kind of some of our predictions before. It is definitely good to see the. I think I've already started seeing some of the reviews of the 6800M, and its dominance already on what it's outputting is amazing. Yeah, it just makes a lot of sense. All the work that they've done for Sony and for Microsoft on on those consoles. Yeah, it makes sense to take advantage of some of the technologies they've built into it. And then package it up as part of a laptop.
Yeah, it's it basically what would you call it? Cross fertilization of the
Mm.
different kind of like product stacks and whatnot, right? So I mean, what's interesting about this is the AMD Advantage tag they have,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
as well as saying, yep, we're gonna have an AMD CPU, AMD GPU. They also, I don't know, would you call it almost a spec, an AMD spec, or minimal acceptable standard for a laptop with,
Mm.
I guess an AMD Advantage badge on it.
Yeah,
You got to have the AMD parts, obviously. You got to have the smart access memory.
yeah.
You've got to have smart shift. They've even gone as far as temperatures, actually. The WASD portion of the keyboard, they've spec'd out as being 40 degrees Celsius at
Mm-hmm.
maximum.
Mm-hmm.
The heat of the keyboard that you're playing with.
Mm-hmm.
The screen is, I think it was 165
Yeah.
hertz,
Yep. Yep.
yeah,
Yep. Yep.
300 nits with really good color, reproduction. And what else did they kind of call out? Battery life as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep. 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 Yep.
the Asus laptop badge with AMD Advantage has 11 hours of
Yeah.
battery life, and it's actually the same one you have, Al.
Yeah. 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 Exactly. They're gonna release the G15, I think, first, and it
Correct,
looks
correct.
it's a compelling package. And yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, AMD already had, the sort of the smaller form factor chips already. You could see it was pulling ahead in terms of efficiencies, and if it can pull less power and then resultantly better, battery life and the heat output, that is perfect for what a laptop needs, right? In that small form factor, it felt like it was an inevitable thing based on what was happening. We just needed to see the results of what the AMD graphics cards could actually do on a mobile setup.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be an interesting remainder of the year for kind of AMD laptops.
Yeah.
I'm hoping there's going to be a bigger uptake of maybe
Mm.
kind of AMD Advantage.
Yeah.
When it's all said and done, the market is still, I would say, varying towards Intel and Nvidia configurations rather than AMD CPUs paired with a different sort of GPUs, or obviously in this case all AMD.
Yeah.
You'd like to see the numbers ramp up from that perspective. And I've kind of also heard they're kind of priced quite competitively.
They're quite good. I think I've seen a few pre-orders for the 6800 one, which is quite pricey. But then I think the 6800 is competing with the 3080. So actually, when you look at it in that light, it's very competitively priced. But again, I suspect AMD are selling the more pricier ones first, whilst they can, with the market being as strangled as it is. Then then the 6700M, 6600M, etc. Once those ones roll out, I'm sure there'll be a kind of a good rush for those sorts of good value kind of gaming laptops.
And what have you observed any of the benchmarks? Have there been any kind of benchmarks that have come out?
Yeah, I've looked at the 600, the 6800M. I think that's the only ones that are out there, and that is pushing slightly above, if not very similar to the 3080 on a mobile form factor. So yeah, then it obviously beats the 3070
Yeah,
quite easily.
it's very comparable.
Mm.
It's very comparable. All good stuff.
Yeah, very good showing from AMD at Computex.
Yeah. Now moving on to FSR,
Mm.
Fidelity Super Resolution.
Yep.
Obviously, it's coming out June 22nd. It's open, which
Yep.
means obviously it works even on Nvidia GPUs as well as older AMD GPUs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They're doing this for PC first, with a view of doing it for console later.
Yep.
But finally out. Finally, DLSS has some competition.
Yep.
Obviously, not a lot of information other than the marketing spiel.
Mm.
We know it's not machine learning, so you're not training any kind of model. You're not working on kind of tentacles or inference or anything along those lines.
Yep. Yep.
It's almost like post-processing, or
Mm.
basically comes at the tail end of the actual graphics pipeline. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Now, it has certain modes of operation, so you've got ultra quality settings or performance settings, and I think there's about five or six settings you
Yep.
can choose from. But at the moment, no real indicators on the level of, let's say, image quality you can
Mm-hmm.
achieve. However, in terms of pure performance and frame rate,
Yep.
it looks impressive. The numbers look impressive. And I think there was one demo they showed where I think it was a GTX, an NVIDIA GTX 1060.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's that graphics card that was at the top of the Steam survey.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
We spoke upon this
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
when we
Yeah.
looked at the Steam survey one podcast, and they had FSR running on that. I think
Yeah.
for Godfall.
Mm-hmm.
Without FSR, it was sub 30,
Yeah.
27, 26 frames a second.
Yeah.
With FSR, it was above 30. I
Yeah.
think 35 frames a second, something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
So they were getting a significant, percentage uplift by introducing FSR. Obviously, the money shot was that it worked on an Nvidia GPU, hence it's open.
Yeah.
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 So a lot of people theorizing is that they may not be able to compete with DLSS in terms of quality, outright quality.
Yeah.
How they do hope to compete is just basically uptake.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you know what? Machine learning, what is that? You have to train your model, whatever it is, and then only after that can you basically run it along on the graphics on the GPU using those tentacles for inference and whatever else.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it's quite a substantial piece of work.
Yeah, so the interesting thing will be what will happen with things like, I'm looking forward to being able to utilize it as well, kind of late end of June. So with my London setup is with the 5700 XT. So, it'd be interesting to see how much gains I can get off that as well, and reducing some of the specs on some of the other games that I'm playing. So yeah, looking forward to testing that. And I'm wondering if we could do something interesting like where they could use DLSS as well as FSR and see what strange output would that give you.
That would be an interesting kind of science experiment. I'll give you that. I don't know what it might do to the image, but I mean, like, it might be a kind of interesting science experiment.
Yeah, because actually, I don't know how that would work. Yeah, because unless you feed the output of one into the other, it would feel like it doesn't. It's like independent. Then it just wouldn't.
You imagine the output would be, okay, we'll apply DLSS and then we'll apply kind of FSR. And if FSR is at the tail end of the graphics pipeline, well, okay, the image looks exactly like the DLSS one. No change.
Yeah, we'll leave that to Digital Foundry to play with.
Exactly. So that's actually all good. So it's something we will kind of look forward to.
Yeah.
Under normal circumstances, the FSR announcement would have been the showstopper.
Yeah.
But Lisa Su's actual gotcha moment, what I'll call it is, it's like that Apple moment where Steve Jobs used to say that one last thing, or whatever it was, right?
Yeah.
Was actually this Vcache thing.
Mm-hmm.
They call it X3D packaging, or the X3D package. And packaging it's like chiplets. It's like multi-chip modules.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like what they did with HBM2 memory, the stacking. So what they've actually done here, they've taken I think it was a Ryzen 5900X.
Yeah.
And they stacked, I think it was 64 megabytes of SRAM on top of the existing cache.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that meant you got 96 megabytes of cache in total.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
They did that through this technique using TSVs or through silicon vias. Yeah. So literally, you're just stacking an additional piece of cache. You're using these TSVs to bond it, and I think to a degree they're interconnects and they also power the extra stacked piece of SRAM.
Yeah.
I vaguely understand it. I'm no expert, but that's what I got from the conversations.
Yeah.
And in effect, that's all that's really changed. Not insignificant, obviously. What it sounded like to me was very plug and play. You wouldn't need to necessarily code for it, let's say. And they were getting it anywhere between 4 to 25% performance increases for games. This you'll like. Monster Hunter World was the game they got a 25% increase in.
Yeah.
For frame rates, I'm talking obviously. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which gets me thinking that instead of, let's say, a kind of Ryzen 3 Plus, whatever they want to call it, yeah, with bumped up kind of clock speeds or better bin chips, they could just release this a version of their existing chips, basically with some of this Vcache stacked on top of it.
Yep.
And I think that would be a bit more meaningful, and they could do this. And Lisa Su already had said they're ready to go into production by the end of the year. So by her saying that means we are going into production at the end of the year. That's what she's kind of saying, right? Which kind of means to me they already had the prototype running. And by the way, the demos they were showing were running on a 5900X with and without the extra cache stacked. That kind of tells me that they're going to produce a chip by the end of the year to potentially basically go up against something like Alder Lake.
Yeah.
I think really geared towards gaming, because not everything is going to benefit from this extra cache. I've heard that maybe video encoding might. Gaming obviously will, but not everything.
Yeah.
And it just sounded to me that's the route they're going. The negative part of this is people are saying that they might push out Zen 4.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's obviously the downside of it. And did I say Ryzen 3? I think I did use Ryzen 3.
Ryzen 3, yeah.
I meant Zen 3.
Yeah.
Zen 3 and Zen 3 Plus.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just to correct myself there. Yeah. So, that for me was the biggest piece of news.
Yeah.
The just one more thing moment I really want to say that Lisa Su kind of delivered, which is very kind of, Apple-esque. But I guess they all do it, that way.
Yeah, well, they've got an advantage, and, if they can keep dropping these extra moments and stuff, surprises, then
Yeah, they just
yeah.
keep pushing it out, don't they? I mean, they just keep pushing it out. Just when you think, yeah, they're on the back foot now. Finally, Intel or whoever else is basically catching up. They just push
Yeah.
this one extra little nugget out there. You know, it's kind of like, I'll just take my white glove off, and I'll basically slap you across the face with it. And then, like, it's that sort of moment, you know what I mean? Like, wake up,
Yeah.
we're not going anywhere. But anyway, enough AMD love, but that was exciting. So let's move on from AMD. Let's talk about Nvidia.
Yeah.
So Nvidia have obviously now released their LHR cards,
Mm-hmm.
the low hash rate cards, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
which apparently you can't hack by just updating the BIOS. So thank God they learned something.
Yeah.
What was interesting is you actually can't tell whether you have got an LHR unless you open up the card
Mm-hmm.
or the system or utility software that typically tell you or give you information around the
Yeah.
hardware
Yeah.
it gets updated.
Mm-hmm.
It does not appear on the box or anything along those lines. Yeah.
Yeah.
But at least they've, in a way, kept to their promise. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I hear it's really useful to combat Ethereum, like mining more than anything else.
I don't know. I think all this stuff now putting it in place, it doesn't matter. That whole market's crashed anyway. I don't.
Yeah, that's the irony of it all. I mean, it's actually kind of like going through the cycle, isn't it?
Yeah, the viability of doing the mining, I've not rechecked, but I'd imagine with the drop, and I'll see how far I've not kept up to it maybe in the last week or so, but even if you looked at the amounts that it dropped, a good 20, 40, 50%, it kept dropping day on day or when I was looking, but whether it's still cost viable to do the mining versus your CPU, your GPU cost, plus all the electricity cost that you need to actually go and do it. So, yeah, I don't know if anyone's reassessed it yet, but at some point, maybe there's gonna be a flood of GPUs on the market onto eBay.
That's gonna happen. There's no doubt about that. I mean, there is a flood of GPUs on eBay, but it's not because of a mining crash.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was one piece of news. Moving on for that, I mean, in terms of the gaming and PC enthusiast kind of world, it's really that the RTX 3080 Ti is coming or come, and also obviously the RTX 3070 Ti.
Yeah.
Let's just talk briefly about the specs. So 3080 Ti, 12 gigabytes of 6x RAM, GDDR6X, versus 24 gigabytes for the 3090.
Mm-hmm.
I understand it's very close to performance to a 3090. Very, very close.
Yeah.
But just less VRAM. In terms of MSRP, 3080 Ti 1200.
Yeah.
3090 1500.
Yeah.
Obviously MSRP doesn't mean a lot,
Mm-hmm.
but if the world was in a better place, you're talking about a delta of 300.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me, looking at the comparison between the Ampere graphics cards that Nvidia put out, that's not bad value in reality.
Mm-hmm.
You just, look at it objectively. Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah.
However, if you're not,
Yeah.
and you basically think, you look at the history of all of this, you think, okay, 3080 Ti 1200. Yeah? That's how much I got a drop for that.
Yeah.
2080 Ti, man, that was 1,000, and that was difficult to swallow.
Yeah.
The 1080 Ti, that was 700.
Yeah.
They've almost doubled it.
Yeah.
Now the 3070 Ti, that is going to be retailing for around about 600.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's almost as fast. Am I right in saying it's almost as fast as a 3080? I think in some benches it's almost as
probably.
fast as a 3080. 8 gigabytes of RAM, and I think it's 6x as well.
Mm-hmm.
3070 is 500, also with 8 gigabytes of RAM. But I think the slower RAM, the standard GDDR6.
Yeah.
So in my view, that's an interesting card.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting card. If it gets close to a 3080, that's obviously gonna be the card to get, in my view.
Yeah.
But as far as gaming and PC enthusiast news. That's all that Nvidia delivered. There
Yep.
wasn't much else. And getting onto Intel, well, not much to speak of.
Yep.
A couple of new CPU SKUs. Yeah. No DG2 graphics details. Bottom of the pile. How boring. So based on that, you basically ask the question, well, who won Computex 2021? And I didn't know that such a kind of competition even existed, right? If one did, right? Yeah, I think AMD kind of knocked it out of the stratosphere in comparison to everybody else.
Yeah, I think it was definitely an AMD easy one for this one
Yeah,
for
it
sure.
was easy. And to be honest, I mean, the one thing they actually did is they had a lot of news to deliver. Whereas Nvidia, I mean, they had a segment I think that was really geared towards enterprise, but really they didn't have much to say apart from the TI.
Yeah, and even then the TIs, from what I can see on reviews and stuff, it wasn't getting well received. Maybe the pricing. It's
the pricing.
that gap. It's the gap between the 3080 to 3090. The 3090 was a card that you don't really need. Then the question becomes, do you need a 3080 Ti?
Yeah. Well, if you could imagine that if the 3090 was priced at between 1200 to 1300, and the 3080 Ti came in around about 900 to 1000.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, that's still a staggering amount of money to pay for a GPU. Yeah. But that would have been a bit more palatable.
Yeah, and I guess it probably is a bit early days still anyway. But what I always like to see is those cost per frame. And I think hands down 3070 was the leader on the previous kind of setups. So whether the 3070 Ti takes that new crown or not, or whether it still stays the 3070, is still TBC. I think until all the reviews have kind of come through. But I think they just expect the 3080 Ti to not be anywhere near those sorts of levels that they had on the other ones.
Yeah. I mean, the 3070 Ti is going to be about what 20% more, more expensive.
Yeah, so that means it needs to at least
3070.
Yeah, it needs to output at least 20% more frames, or at least in terms of speed across a number of games. And if it can do that, then maybe it will take the crown.
Yeah, I mean,
but it will really depend.
Yeah, will it is the question. I mean, the thing is, again, the pricing would have been a bit more palatable had, let's say, the 3070 come in with 12 gigabytes of memory.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then probably would have been a bit more. I don't know. Probably would have been a bit more useful as a creator card as well.
Yeah.
And then 3080 Ti, 16 gigabytes. But I think the 6x memory they have is either expensive, and I also hear quite power hungry. So I guess there are limitations around that to what they can do with it. Yeah, it is what it is. I mean, it's good these cards are out there, that we can stop speculating whether there's going to be a new series of Tile Ti, graphics GPUs, and whether the RTX kind of like Ampere range is going to get a refresh. There it is. Here's your refresh, and just move on from that.
Yeah, indeed.
But somehow I don't think I'm going to be able to get a 3080 Ti that fits in my ITX case, though. I mean, I'm just assuming it's a bit too power hungry, and it's a bit too kind of like it's a bit too much of a kind of a heat generator. But let's see.
Yeah.
Okay, Al. So that's Computex done. AMD clear winners. Hooray for the AMD fanboys. Team Red 1-0, as it were. Right. So let's move on to our next topic.
Cool.
So, Al, I think on the next topic, what we should discuss is the games that we are looking forward to in 2021. Let's start with you. Let's see. What are you most looking forward to? What releases?
And in fact, one's already come out. The Mass Effect, the sort of Legendary Edition, the whole remaster, has only just recently come out. I've not purchased it yet, but I look forward to playing that. And the reviews have been really good on it. I think Mass Effect 1 has had a nice uplift. The UI's had an uplift. A number of changes has been quite nice to it. Similarly with Mass Effect 2. And then 3, actually, they've not actually made that many changes, but 3 was already a much newer game in comparison to the other one. So Mass Effect, sort of Legendary Edition, yeah, looking forward to playing that one and getting into it.
Yeah, I'm considering that, Al. I've actually got the Mass Effect trilogy basically on Xbox 360.
Yep.
But I've only ever dabbled in, I think, the first one.
Yeah.
I mean, a couple of these games are still in the cellophane.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, it might be a good time to basically get... Obviously, there's a digital version, so I'll do that, and just to, re-familiarise myself with it.
Yeah. I mean, I just enjoyed it so much on the original, and, I do... It's one of those I do go back to playing every so often, so having it kind of uplifted again, would be great, so... I will be picking it up, but just not sure exactly when. Then I think probably my next most anticipated one would be the Diablo 2 remaster, when that comes through as well. That one I'm really looking forward to. In the past, I've sank so many hours into it that I would actually, I will really enjoy playing that again. So I'm looking forward to Diablo 2.
I think I'm with you on this one. I mean, I did dabble again with D2, but I didn't sink the kind of hours you did into it. For me, it just looked really, really compelling and interesting. I like Blizzard games, let's be honest. I just wonder how I would feel about D2 game, because D2, I don't think they've really changed the mechanics too much. It's still D2 underneath. They've got to put new shiny clothes on top of it, but it's still D2, right? And having played D3 as much as I have, going back to D2, I mean, I'm wondering, will I enjoy it? Because I'll have a certain expectation, not remembering much about D2. Then I'll play it and I'll think, oh, this is not what I expected. I just wonder if that's going to happen.
I think for me, I'm fully expecting it to be like it was before, and because I enjoyed it so much, I'm sure I'll be fine with it. It's just, it'll be a rush for me to get my sorceress up to level 90 or whatever it is. I think it's 90. I think they actually, oh yes, I remember now. They used to have a curve to get to 100, but basically it was exponential between 90 to 100 in terms of your levels. So it's almost impossible to get to level 100, but you could if you spent enough time grinding all the way through and not dying too much. Yeah, you would be able to do that through that. So yeah, I'll be rushing a character quickly, and then rushing the characters purely just to grind bosses and pick up loot as quickly as you can. So yeah, I'm looking forward to doing a bit of that. Oh, next one I think is probably Horizon 2. I think that will probably be the game to push me to get a PS5. I think as soon as I see that and when it's out, that would really push me to try and look for sourcing a PS5.
Did you actually watch the 4K video feed
Yeah.
of that?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a stunning game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That game looked absolutely jaw-dropping and stunning.
Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously, we've got to talk about this later. But what the hell is everybody thinking? Who cares if it's cross-gen? What are you thinking? Look at it.
Yeah.
It looks amazing. What are you hoping to happen?
Yeah, the danger with cross-genning it back as well. Maybe, I don't know. As long as it doesn't impact and delay the PS5 version too much, or impact, it's kind of like, you don't want it to do like a Crysis 1 to Crysis 2, where it has to downscale so much that it messes up, even how good it should look. So it's one of those sorts of things that, as long as it doesn't impact the PlayStation 5 version and how amazing it looks already, then great.
Yeah, I mean, we'll go into a bit more detail about that later, Al. But I've got to say, I mean, if you look at the video feed, especially the 4K one, I'm not sure that it's graphically had any sort of effect whatsoever on the PlayStation 5 version. I mean, I'm just thinking, what's the problem here? So what if it's cross-gen? Look at the game.
Yep.
It looks amazing.
Yep.
Yeah. It looks amazing. So I'm in agreement. I think Horizon 2 is cross-gen or not. that looks an amazing game and something I'm really looking forward to this year.
Yeah, and another game. I mean, there's other ones like I don't know if Diablo 4 is this year. I doubt it's this year. And then maybe I would say there's a Warhammer game that I'm be looking at called Battle Sector. That I think is out in July as well, which looks interesting. So I'm keeping my eye on that one.
I've not heard of that. I have to look it up now. What kind of game is it?
It's turn based, but Warhammer 40k. It looks like it's a campaign mode. I've not seen if it's got a kind of an online mode, but looks pretty good.
Yeah, I've got so many Warhammer 40k games that I've not even played. It's unbelievable. I'll have to look that one up.
Yeah, those are my ones. Have you got any other ones, Joe?
Before we get on to that, I see you got Overwatch 2. Is that coming out this year?
Yeah, I wasn't sure. It's due, but I'm not sure exactly when. There's lots of kind of trailers and other things for it. Let me just check. When is it due? Again, with Overwatch and Overwatch 2, I wasn't too keen after Overwatch 1 for quite some time. Is there a release date? I don't think there is. It says launching 2021, I think.
Interesting.
Oh, no, hang on, no. It says it doesn't include Overwatch 2 launching in 2021. So it's probably not this year. Probably not this year.
Which is no surprise, really.
Yeah, but they've got, character renders, trailers, and all sorts of stuff already ready for it. So they know what they're doing with it. Maybe they're just giving a bit of space for Diablo, maybe.
Yeah. There is that, isn't there? I mean, like, devs and publishers tend to space out game releases to give kind of... I mean, look, it's about competition and and really they're competing for people's time.
Yep.
That's the really kind of decisions they've got to make, really.
Yeah.
As per me, let's get that out of the way. Horizon 2, absolutely looking forward to that. Horizon 1, I think, amazing last gen game. Yeah. And, the last gen really, it was kind of astounding that they actually got that out of a a PS4 base end kind of Pro.
Yeah.
Really looking forward to Diablo 2 because, I just kind of want to re-sample, D2 and just Diablo in general, because I don't really think Diablo 4 is coming out this year. No, that's for sure. Really looking forward to Ratchet and Clank. Because I firmly believe that will be a game that really kind of almost shows off your PS5.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Really shows off your PS5 and, that's not a cross-gen game. And it'll be, again, that's also going to be interesting. You'll have Horizon 2, you'll have Ratchet. You're going to have a comparison.
Yeah.
Yep.
If
Rift Apart is so much better in terms of the gameplay design, the graphics fidelity, the 3D audio, the control, whatever it may be, right?
Yeah.
Then we've got a lot to look forward to, because I tell you, Horizon 2 just looked amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. If somehow a Rift Apart trumps that, well, we're in for a bit of a treat, aren't we? I am hoping that Halo Infinite does come out this year.
Yeah.
And I am hoping that it improves significantly based on what I'd seen before.
Yeah. It needs to do something, right, for the Xbox crowd. That's what it needs to do.
Because that would be my cue in getting myself a Series X.
Yeah.
Maybe getting a contract and, whatever else, for Games Pass, getting a Series X as part of that contract, if they're still doing that. And I honestly also think that Halo in a open... And I think this is what they were aiming for, more of an open world sort of scenario.
Yeah.
Could work. Yeah, it could work, because I do remember the first Halo, and I just remember saying, these maps, these levels are so expansive.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking it's a game that might lend itself to that.
Yeah.
But let's see. I mean, I'm hoping that's going to be good. What else am I looking forward to? I mean, Returnal's out, and I will try and get that. But I don't know that I'm gonna go out my way to do it. Yeah. One game that I really did like the look of was Kena Bridge of Spirits. It's an indie game, and it's actually priced at, I think, about £32.
Right.
So it's it's not full price, but it's an indie game. So I'm quite looking forward to that. And there was Rift Breaker. I say it's a PC game. It's it looked like a a mixture of RTS based building plus tower defense,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
it's a day one Game Pass
Hmm.
game as well. So again, that might be my cue in getting kind of paying for my Game Pass subscription and kind of making use of that.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think for this year, that's really what I'm looking forward to. Bring on Horizon, bring on Ratchet and Clank, Diablo 2, Riftbreaker,
Yeah.
and if they can basically get Halo Infinite out this year, I might get myself an Xbox Series X,
Yeah.
because of that.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
hoping that's going to be good because I think Halo needs a bit of a boost.
Yeah.
It's the granddaddy of console shooters.
Yeah.
That is a game that made console shooters good. Like,
Yeah. It'd be interesting how Halo Infinite evolves and whether it's more open world than, say, if you were to look at what it's competing against, it would feel like it's against Destiny. You would feel like it's against that sort of thing, where it's kind of a little bit RPG, a little bit kind of open world, and a bit more kind of the service kind of angle around it. And maybe they're
yeah.
going after those guys, but I'm hoping it's much more MMO like. But I'll wait to see more details of it.
You know what? I don't even have those ambitions for it. I
Hmm.
think if it tries to go after something like Destiny, Warframe, or anything along those lines, yeah,
Yeah.
it's gonna massively fail.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
think first iteration of Halo Infinite, please just make it good. Make it look good. Make it play really
Yeah.
well the way we remember Halo playing, great gunplay. Yeah. By all means, try and give it this kind of open world, take, this slant. But don't think for 1 second that you're going to release this thing and you're going to be able to take on something like Destiny. You know how I feel about Destiny, right? I mean, but
Yeah.
the reality is, right? No matter what you say about Destiny, it's Destiny and it's super popular
Hmm.
and there's no two
Yeah.
ways about it. No matter what Bungie try and do to it to kind of aggravate the community, right? It you know it,
Yeah.
it it goes on. Warhammer,
Hmm. Hmm.
I mean, sorry, Warframe, forget about it.
Yeah.
Just make it a good Halo game, you know? All the things that made Halo great, put it into this
Yeah.
game. There's a lot of smart people kind of working, at the game studio building it, and at Microsoft, come on.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really what I'm looking forward to, to this year.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens. I mean, I've got high expectations for Horizon,
Yeah.
Ratchet, all of those guys. Halo, obviously, I'm a little bit dubious on, but I'm hoping.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, we just, it's before there's always the kind of rush before Christmas of getting releases out for, for Game of the Year and
Yeah,
stuff. So,
exactly.
no doubt there'll be a few special kind of games kind of coming out, from the side that kind of feeds into it as well.
Yeah, and once E3 happens, I think it's in a
Mm.
week or and a half. Then, we might get
Yeah.
you know, we might get more information. There might be more kind of like must-play games coming out.
Yeah.
We know we're not going to get God of War this year,
Yeah. Yeah.
but there'll be other games. I'm hoping, I'm just hoping to be excited. Maybe that rumored Metal Gear Solid remake comes out this year. Imagine that would be
If
amazing.
Yeah, if that pops out, yeah, that would be amazing.
And that's also a PS5 only. Well, the rumours say it's a PS5 only. Well, that's reality, different story.
Yeah.
Okay, Al, with that said, time to move away from, our most anticipated games to the next topic. So, Al, what we want to talk about next is Epic vs. Apple, this ongoing antitrust court case.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as people might know, antitrust laws are regulations to encourage competition. I mean, that's the way
Yeah.
to think about it. And what's happening right now is that, for one thing, Fortnite is not on the App Store. So obviously Apple have taken that off.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Epic really accuses Apple of monopolistic and anti-competitive behavior.
Mm.
Okay? And, let's be honest, the key complaint is around that 30% commission on all, payments, through the App Store.
Yeah.
based on any kind of transaction made on the App Store.
Yeah.
And I think in addition to that, really the inability to take direct payments. Yeah, so you couldn't basically, if a piece of software is on the Apple App Store, you can't actually make any sort of direct payment to Epic through the
Yeah.
app itself. And what's interesting is the judge who was assigned to the case, and Yvonne Gonzalez Rogers, actually warned that given Epic's desire to open up the iOS ecosystem to other
Yeah.
stores, in effect, yeah, this could have kind of serious ramifications for platforms such as PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo. So it's a very kind of broad, wide sweeping case and issue. And really, the analogy that I make to anybody that follows football or European football, soccer, is the Bosman ruling. Yeah? Because once that happened, it had serious implications for the actual player transfer market.
Yeah.
Yeah? So it's obviously, nothing to be ignored.
Yeah. Definitely.
But, all sorts of shenanigans have happened, even to the point of like certain, parties trying to define what a game is. Yeah, obviously sounds a little bit ridiculous, but I guess, the law system is based on definition and context and, all of that sort of thing. And really, even Tim Sweeney arguing that Fortnite is actually not really a game, it's a
Yeah.
metaverse. Yeah, which is kind of a
Yeah.
virtual reality space where users can interact or kind of generate content, as much as I understand. It's a platform, basically. It's a
Yeah.
platform.
Yeah.
Basically, throughout the whole case, we've had really juicy bits of information come out, really around Epic, Sony, Xbox, Apple. Yeah. So, I mean, just getting into this,
Yeah.
Epic had paid $146 million to 2K Borderlands 3 PC exclusivity for 6 months. I mean, Tim Sweeney has said that Epic Game Store is hundreds of millions of dollars away, from being profitable. And it probably
Yeah.
won't be profitable, for 3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
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 Fortnite had generated $9 billion in 2 years, and Epic had also pushed Xbox to drop subscriptions for multiplayer. In effect, remove the requirement for Xbox Live Gold subscription for free-to-play multiplayer games. Yeah.
Yeah.
Epic had gone to Sony and had proposed to pay Sony $200 million to get multiple PlayStation exclusives. Didn't really say what PlayStation exclusives, and obviously PlayStation exclusives for the PC. We're not talking
Yeah.
about consoles here.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Epic had also tried to secure a similar deal with Microsoft. That was turned down due to concerns over competition between Xbox Games Pass and obviously the Epic Store on PC. And Matthew Weisinger, Epic's marketing director, had also claimed that mobile represents the biggest growth opportunity for Fortnite, which is, another reason why this dispute with Apple is happening.
Yeah.
On Sony's side, Sony would only allow cross-play functionality between Fortnite players on PS4 if it could charge Epic for additional royalty to offset a reduction in revenue. And as we know, Sony has invested $450 million into Epic. And you have to wonder
Yeah.
why. You have to wonder why.
Yeah.
Now, moving on to Xbox. Laurie Wright, Microsoft's VP for Gaming, Media Entertainment, confirmed that Microsoft does not and has never made profit from sales of its consoles. I'm assuming the hardware.
Yeah.
And that the revenue from subscriptions and commissions from digital sales, which is a 30% cut similar to Apple's, offsets this.
Yeah.
Microsoft's commission on PC was also brought down from 30 to 12%, but that's not yet happened on consoles. Moving on to Apple, 62% of all App Store revenue generated was by games. 62%. But Apple doesn't know if the App Store makes a profit, which seems a little bit ludicrous, obviously. And in terms of Fortnite, Apple had spent $1 million on marketing Fortnite, but earned in excess of 100 million. Yeah, 100 million, dollars through Fortnite.
Yeah. Yeah.
And with the lawsuit that's in motion, 23% of iOS games will be affected by the trial, depending which way it goes, obviously.
Yeah.
So those are the facts. There's quite a lot of facts. There's quite a lot of, I would say, juicy bits of information. Basically, really highlighting some of the deals that go on behind the scenes. No company's basically any kind of knight in shining armor.
Yeah, they're all being dragged into this.
Yeah,
Even Steam, Valve. Although I think they've refused to pass the information on so far through a subpoena or something.
correct.
But yeah, they've been asked as well on a similar vein as to what's their charging model, how much they're making on kind of in-game purchases and things like that.
Yeah, there ain't no, I'm holy then thou moment here, right? I mean, not at all.
Yeah, and I don't know, Joe, if you actually know the kind of the original reason why this kind of kicked off.
I mean, what was the original reason?
Yeah, so the original reason was, again, yes, Fortnite was massively popular, clearly making lots of money on various platforms, whether it was Google Play, whether it was the Apple App Store, whether it was whether it was PlayStation, etc. It was making lots of money regardless on all platforms. And what Epic did was, as they were kind of rolling out their Epic store and other things, was that they actually enabled the ability to purchase the in-game currency through the Epic store at a 20% discount in comparison to all the other ones, because everything else was the same level, which meant then obviously what they would do is they would funnel 10% back to themselves, I guess, through that particular route of being able to purchase on the own Epic store. And then as soon as that happened, basically Apple and Google pulled Fortnite from their stores, and obviously then that's where Epic are kind of moving in to say, well, it's anti-competitive what they've just done there.
That's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, like, so you've got your game, your service on a storefront of sorts, but then on your own storefront, you're basically undercutting them.
Yeah, with the in-game currency, which is, and if you think about it, a free game that you are hosting on iOS, on Apple Store, and they're getting nothing as a result of the funneling of the cash through a different route. So
You might say the in-game currency is almost everything in terms of the revenue, isn't it? I mean, maybe I'm mistaken here,
it's a
but
difficult one. Maybe there is a general thing around actually what's the. I'm sure Apple must be, unless they've got a charging model for free-to-play games, but they should be getting something like user subscriptions count or something that
you
gets charged back to Epic or something.
Yeah, I'm certainly not saying kind of like Apple are blameless in all of this. Equally, it doesn't sound like Epic or either. You know what I mean?
No, exactly. So it's like there needs to be a fair level of
Yeah.
okay. If it's being hosted on the Apple Store, there needs to be some money that goes towards it being there and for users of it via the Apple platform. But and if they're cutting them away from the in-game purchases, then what is that to make it a bit more fair?
Well, yeah. I mean, you'd have to stump up some sort of upfront tax, wouldn't you, or some sort?
Well, yeah, and that's where exactly was leading me on to, Joe, was obviously with more recently on the G7 political arena, where they've kind of caught up and said that, that they're going ahead with a generic global digital tax of 15%. How does that affect things like these in-game purchases? Because no doubt the various governments around the globe will be taking a 15% cut as well on this stuff now.
Or they'll try to. I mean, obviously.
Yes, they'll try to.
I mean, it's not just because they're saying that's going to happen doesn't mean it's going to happen. I mean, is that fair? Is that lawful?
Yeah. Although it's only 15% of the cut, right? So it's not
We're talking about billions of dollars in pounds and euros. I mean, that's not a small cut. That's not a small number. It's quite interesting. I mean, let's be honest, right? There ain't no force of good in any of this, is there?
No.
I'm trying to work out who's the white knight in this relationship here, and I don't see one. You know what I mean?
No, it's all capitalism.
Yeah, it is. It's pure capitalism. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
I mean, looking at this, thinking about this, the ruling may not come out until maybe mid-August. I guess it's that complicated a thing.
Yeah.
It's so impactful that obviously it needs time to kind of gestate. I mean, what could happen? Let's say nothing happens. Parking aside, I think the G7 ruling, or whatever it was, or
Yeah.
proposal, whatever it was, and it's status quo. That means that the service that Apple offer is worth the 30% cut. The
Well,
access to their
it,
ecosystem, the access to their customer base is worth that 30%. That's what status quo
yeah,
would mean to me.
I would say status quo to me would mean Fortnite stays off of Apple and Android, Google Play Store, and Epic continue as is.
Mm.
So no change on that. That's what I would expect.
I generally do not think that Epic actually want that. Yeah,
Mm.
because that way everybody loses. Yeah.
Oh yeah. They want a ruling that would state that, yeah, somewhere along the lines of, and I expect, and this is where I'm thinking is that it needs to be available on the platform. So an agreement, and maybe it's part of the way that they have to sign agreements going forward between the service, the game provider, game publisher versus the platform that it's on. But again, it's access to to that user base, because there's so many users on Android, on Apple, which are playing Fortnite. What is this? What is the offering around it now? Is it that the ruling will stipulate that you have to have the in-game purchase has to be equal across all of it? I don't think they'll do. I don't think they'll push that. But I suspect it should, in all fairness, state that there needs to be something to give an incentive to Apple, to Google, to host your game. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense.
Do you know what I really think is going to happen? What I really think is going to happen is that the 30% cut is going to get reduced
Uh-huh.
for content that people deem as being a platform or a metaverse. I
Uh-huh.
think ideally that's what Epic would prefer to have. Yeah.
Mm.
I don't know that they're necessarily looking to absolutely disrupt Apple's business model or Google's business model. Because that level of disruption might not be good for business.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they could drop off the kind of 30% cut to something like Microsoft did for the PC, from 30 to 12 or 30 to 15. You're talking about billions of kind of dollars of revenue. I think that would probably suit them.
Yeah, but I think it's on really shaky ground though, because if they start doing something like that and they call it that, if it's not considered a traditional game and you call it a metaverse, then
Metaverse.
everything else is going to say, "Oh, I'm a metaverse."
Well, that's already starting to happen. Roblox came out and said, "No, we're not a game either," you know.
Yeah,
And
it's like a
how about
platform.
Minecraft? But that's Microsoft. Oh, we're not a game. All of a sudden, everybody's not a game. Destiny, we're not a
Yeah.
game. Yeah, I know you
Oh, you
guys weren't a
might.
game. You, not a game that I really want to play at the moment. But I mean,
I think what would be funny if is they get to a point where they say, "No, we're not a game. We're a casino."
yeah, I mean, it's a little bit comical from that sense. I mean, like, it's like people laugh at the whole conversation about what is a game. But
Yeah.
I can understand why people are having that conversation.
Yeah.
I can understand it. But I actually thought the more interesting perspective here was: is there an outcome where third-party storefronts would be allowed on some of these well-known kind of app stores, like Apple's, obviously,
Mm.
like the Xbox one, like the Nintendo one, like the PlayStation one. Now, I think when Tim Cook took the stand, he actually said there would be issues with security, overhead in collecting payments,
Yeah.
complexity in user experience would be impacted, which is quite clear, really. Because obviously it's simple now, it wouldn't be if we allowed multiple storefronts. Jurisdiction, I think, as well, of who owns a problem.
Mm.
Let's say, for instance, you've got, I don't know, a Game Pass storefront running on Steam. Yeah?
Yeah.
When the issue happens on Game Pass, is it Steam's problem or is it Game Pass's problem? Let's say a game got taken down from Game Pass for whatever reason. Is that Steam's problem
Mm.
or is that Game Pass's problem?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. I think.
Yeah.
I think it depends on situation to situation. But Apple, I think, what they need to do is think of themselves more like literally an operating system. Treat it like it's just Windows. It's a platform where you've got a whole bunch of users that are on it,
Mm,
and charge based on that, a subscription, a user model, a license agreement,
yeah.
um,
True.
and those sorts of things. Really, yeah.
Then you've got that internal almost competition. Do you
Mm.
do you say, if you have a presence on our app store, then you can't sell what we sell? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a anti-compete to an
Yeah.
extent on the sorts of things
Does
that can
that
be offered. Yeah.
basically almost make the whole conversation redundant then? You know what I mean? It's
Or if it is anti-compete in terms of similar to yeah, we discussed it a few times around whose lunch are you actually eating
yeah.
by offering certain things. Making sure there's an incentivization in order for it to make it work on the other one. Maybe it's a much smaller cut, but at least it allows for it to exist, and there's still a bit of revenue that goes back to places that offer you that opportunity.
There's a lot of overhead here, and the integration as well that you to allow.
Mm.
I mean, of course you can just chuck on an app onto a device or a platform, whatever it may be, and but that's not a very clean way of doing it.
Yeah.
There's operational overheads and whatnot by doing that. So it's quite an interesting subject, and I think what I thought of was this. There's the argument that if I'm Game Pass, I should be allowed on the PlayStation Store.
Hmm.
But could you imagine a situation where Microsoft said, "Oh no, we're not going to put Game Pass on PlayStation Store. We're not going to do
Mm.
that." Yeah, and the
Yeah.
reason they wouldn't do that is because Game Pass is such a USP for the Xbox consoles and Windows,
Yeah.
let's say gaming. By putting it on the PlayStation, that also kind of says that, well, we've got to not be taking away games and making them exclusive. So
Mm.
there's this whole counter argument of, if you did that, then what happens here in this scenario? And is that anti-competitive?
Mm.
There's so many things that ways this could go.
Yeah, you could be tripped up multiple times in multiple levels, and again, doing that as you've kind of said it before. Whose lunch are you going to be eating, right? If you offer this up, open this up to the world, then what's going to happen? Whose service are you taking away from? Whose console are you taking away
Yeah,
from?
yeah,
Whose
exactly. Yeah.
storefront are you taking away from?
I mean, I just kind of hope like whatever happens with this, right?
Mm.
It's fair. I think that's the
Yeah,
key thing. It has to be fair. Otherwise, why
yeah,
do this? Yeah,
yeah.
because we don't want to get us into a situation like that. The rulings happened. Whatever the outcome is, but it just makes the situation far more complicated for the end user, the gamer, the consumer. Sure, it opens it up a little bit, but is it of benefit? To the
Mm.
normal man or woman? Yeah.
Yeah,
I hope that works out the way we think it's going to work out or we want it to work out. But I can
yeah.
tell you, the Bosman ruling didn't work out the way we wanted it to work out.
Hmm.
If you know what I mean. It's exciting and it's interesting, but is it
Yeah.
fair? I don't know.
Mm.
I think
Yeah.
that's one
Yeah.
thing I would
Yeah.
say. It's got to, whatever what happens, it's got to be fair.
Yep. Yeah, and I think the key will be literally just the players, as long as they have access to the games, and as long as the in-game purchases don't skyrocket off the back of this, I think we're probably okay. But like you say, if there's some strange consequence as a result of the ruling, then yeah, let's just hope it's not detrimental to the gamers.
Indeed. And with that said, let's move on to the next topic. Enough about law. Okay, Al. Our next topic is Risc Arm
Mm.
and how it might affect computing in gaming.
Hmm.
Computing in gaming. Obviously, it's another long subject, and before I get into this, I'm just going to give a brief history
Hmm.
to anybody that might be listening to this. And the history is generally about Risc and how it started off, where we are today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, where we are today. Risc, if you don't know, is basically reduced instruction set computer or
Hmm.
chip. That's interchangeable these days. And it's a chip with small, highly optimized set of instructions
Hmm.
versus a CISC, which is a complex instruction set computer or chip.
Hmm.
And that's really your x86.
Hmm.
One thing about that Risc executes instructions in a low number of clock
Hmm.
cycles. Now, ARM itself is a family of Risc CPUs started by a UK company called Acorn. Al, you and I will
Yeah.
both know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they used to make computers like the BBC Model B was actually linked to the actual BBC TV channel. We know, love or loathe, in the UK.
Yeah.
Yeah. And at the time there was an associated show called, I think it was the Computer Program. Some sterile name they
Oh,
used. Yeah.
was it? Well, there was Tomorrow's World, if it was that one.
It's all that sort of stuff, really. But the aim of these programs was to basically spread computer literacy. The BBC Model B, it was big in the educational area, so the BBC Micro was adopted in primary and secondary schools, and basically that was in the 80s. First, ARM chips also basically made an appearance back in, I think, the 80s, I think 1983 to be precise. Yeah, and one noteworthy fact was that the BBC Model B was used to simulate the first ARM chip design. A BBC Model B was used for that, shockingly. To give context to why Risc and ARM was such a coveted technology at the time, the ARM2 chip architecture was roughly 7 times the performance of a typical 7 MHz 68,000 base system, like a Commodore Amiga or Macintosh SE.
Yeah.
It was twice as fast as an Intel 386, running at 16 MHz, and was about the same speed as a multi-processor fax super mini computer. So, all considered, fast as shit, in its day. And again, these ARM chips, these ARM2 chips were actually introduced into the Acorn Archimedes range of computers, in the 80s. And, other noteworthy examples of Risc CPUs include MIPS, PowerPC, Sun Spark, and obviously the mobile chips that we know from Samsung or Qualcomm. And we know right now, in terms of Risc, there's a massive market penetration, especially in the mobile space.
Yeah.
It's massive.
Yeah.
Okay. Recent developments: Apple M1, Windows 10 for ARM. We already know Linux distros already work with ARM. Nvidia want to acquire ARM for $40 billion, dollars. And I think with a view to use it in enterprise for kind of machine learning.
Yeah.
And going through some of these details, I mean, let's go one by one. Let's talk about Apple. Obviously, Apple M1, they've now got a bit of synergy between mobile devices and laptop and desktop, I should say, which we know is actually compatible with Windows 10 via Windows 10 for ARM, so you can run that on your Apple M1. How will moving Apple devices to a single Risc architecture affect their games offering? Now that's what I'm wondering. And my view is it's just going to be about simplifying games development for that platform. If you develop something for like an iPad or an iPhone with the same architecture, you're going to have that, and we know it will run on the M1 computers.
So any Mac or kind of MacBook, they'll all run off that, which would be quite nice then. So like you say, a single platform where you can at least guarantee, well, to an extent, that it will run a bit better in terms of compatibility, right? And you don't have to rewrite something else in order to make it work for a different style of chip.
Yeah,
for Apple.
Absolutely. And the engines will also help with that. I would have thought. In terms of gaming, that's what it brings to the table. We know the M1 chips, great chips in terms of power, performance, that sort of thing, in general efficiency. So it's a real step forward for Apple. If we can get some synergy with games development across all Apple devices, if developers can, let's say, become a bit more efficient, and as a consequence, really pool their resources across a number of different devices, because they share the same underlying architecture, I think that can only be good for Apple gaming, to be honest. And I think it's something they've always wanted to do, if you ask me. Now, ironically or not, I think Microsoft making an ARM compatible version of Windows really is helpful to Apple kind of gaming in general. Now, Microsoft had released Windows on ARM, I think it started off back in 2017. However, Windows 4 ARM, maybe not Windows 10, goes back kind of much further, I think 2011. But right now, what they've introduced for Windows in ARM back in December 2020, and I think this is just for a beta preview, x64 emulation.
Mm.
x64
Mm-hmm.
emulation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, Microsoft and Qualcomm teamed up to create a Windows on ARM developer PC. So they're just trying to
Mm.
push forward with, let's say, application development for ARM on Windows. They're
Yeah.
not leaving behind x86. Don't get me wrong, but they're
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
trying to basically, what I've understood is, say to developers, look, do both. Yeah, do
Mm.
both. So I just kind of wonder, is Microsoft's future in fact a risk one?
Ooh. Maybe. I mean, it leaves a door open, right? In terms of what they're doing there, and it's very smart, right? Because I mean, maybe it's off the back of their ventures into, Windows mobiles and all those sorts
Correct.
of things,
Yeah, yeah, of
um,
course.
which didn't quite work out too well for them. But I think this, allows them to have, virtual machines on these ARM, or Risc based kind of offerings, and it just increases their licenses, right? So they just have more people using Windows, more people using Office 365, and the whole suite of stuff. So I think it's good on them to actually making that available, because there's going to be, there's such a big market of consumers that could utilize it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, to a degree, they're hedging their bets, no doubt about that.
Mm.
But with especially, I mean, what interests me for gaming is just the emulation piece, and I just wonder one day if it
Yeah.
could be quick enough that it's just like, you know, it's kind of like you're running software on
Mm.
a x86, but it's ARM, yeah. And I mean, I think it matters a lot for gaming.
Hmm.
'Cause obviously, it's performance centric, but that could be a big thing. Definitely a big
Mm.
thing. And moving on to Nvidia, who obviously they're
Mm.
betting big on ARM. They're trying to acquire ARM, for
Yes.
40 billion, US dollars. Yeah. I mean, what people think it's also about enterprise and machine
Mm.
learning. Really, I think the spec definition of ARM 9, which
Mm.
seems to be really geared towards machine learning,
Yeah.
better
Hmm.
security, and again, ARM's generally, backwards compatible. So
Yeah.
ARM 8 was designed for virtualization, scalar floating points, and
Mm.
bfloat apps, which again I think it's really for AI, machine learning, and scientific applications. So
Yeah.
for me, it
Yeah.
feels like it's about enterprise.
Hmm. Hmm.
Nvidia have also released these things called Grace CPUs based on
Hmm.
ARM. They're geared towards AI, and let's view out the marketing hype. 30x higher bandwidth and
Mm.
10x app performance versus something else for basically enterprise and scientific workloads, right? And I think
Yeah.
they talked about that in NVIDIA's GTC
Hmm. Hmm.
2021. So from that perspective, whilst they're focused on really, I think, for enterprise, yeah, will we see
Yeah.
NVIDIA actually challenge in the CPU market, especially with the advent of Windows 10 for ARM? Yeah,
Hmm. I suspect they won't, but if the ARM purchase goes through, then you know there is a possibility. I just don't see them focusing on that as a kind of main effort going into the CPU market specifically.
I'd agree with you, but I'd agree with you from the consumer market. I think for
Hmm.
enterprise, that's going to be a bit
Hmm.
different.
Yeah.
I think they will kind of obviously focus on that, and as a consequence of that, with whatever advantages it might bring, going ARM and Risc, right? Will it force AMD and Intel to produce their own Risc Arm variants? Because I know those guys
Yeah.
have looked at it in the past, but now there's a business competitive reason to do it. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Well, I think that one is ultimately, and I think you're right. If enterprise moves to risk based as well, separating out the sort of separate GPUs, separate cores, separate other things for specific distinct purposes, right? They can easily continue on that line. And actually, over time, because enterprise will end up hosting cloud services for almost any other thing, could be an individual PC, it would only make sense that the individual CPU, individual kind of consumer machines are also the same. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck in the middle because you've got you've got enterprise you've got mobile on the other side, all on Risc based, and then you're stuck in the middle with just a basic retail consumer of as someone on an old platform, really. So
Great.
yeah, it may be that it's forced into it, but it will depend on, like you say, the enterprise stuff. Mobile, there's no real dispute on that side. Yeah, it does depend on a few more things moving towards that, and then it's just synergies of creating these things then, and maintenance of these, being able to make things run on the CISC-based CPUs, etc.
Yeah, agree. And then you kind of move on to the consoles, and this is actually quite a funny one. It's a little bit ironic, really. If you look at it, PS1 used a MIPS Risc CPU. PS2, the Emulsion engine was Risc.
Yeah.
PS3, the Cell processor at its core, it had PowerPC. I'm not sure what you classify the SPUs on a PS3 as, but maybe it was Risc. In Xbox 360, I think it was PowerPC based. So again, that's a variant of Risc as I understand it. GameCube, Wii U, all PowerPC based. Current day Nintendo, Switch basically uses Nvidia's Tegra X1 system on a chip, basically which has ARM and ARM 4 Cortex 87 cores. So that's basically ARM Risc all the way.
Yeah.
And it's the irony of it. Now that Xbox and PlayStation consoles are on x86, and this is the second generation they've been on x86, yeah?
Yeah.
And now that backwards compatibility is a thing, it's an expected feature. Continuity is an expected feature. Will these guys ever go back to Risc anytime soon?
They're gonna need a push. There needs to be a push from someone to force them to do it. And like you say, the backward compatibility side is going to be difficult. But maybe this is where Windows has given them an opportunity, right? If you can make x86 run on a Risc-based system or just even ARM, then there's a way forward for them to provide some level of compatibility. Even if maybe it's a bit more laggy, a bit more clunky, but, at least it's there.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And for me, looking at it, because I'm almost seeing there being potential. I mean, this is years away, by the way. This is not going to happen, in the next 5 years or anything along those lines. That typical computing is going to basically go to Risc for the normal guy. I'm not talking about enterprise, but let's just say for the normal guy. But yet, games consoles are going to be on x86, whereas years and years ago, games consoles were pretty much all Risc based. Yeah, and that's a strange thing for me. I mean, but like you said, if the emulation part of it works out, not so much a factor. If AMD or Intel or Nvidia were to go all in with Risc, to be honest, I don't see, let's say, Microsoft or Sony going their own way and creating their own chips.
Yeah, they would follow suit, and it would only make sense. Again, it's like a critical mass of mobile's already very clear what it's going. It's not. There's nothing else out there.
Yeah, they're not going x86 anytime soon. In the next millennium.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was just an interesting kind of, in terms of Risc. That's just some interesting facts there. And I just think, watch this space. Things seem to be changing rapidly, and I kind of think in the next 5 years, look at the landscape. The PC might look a little bit different.
And I'm interested in a topic that I've kind of tagged as a later one, but there's always these talk of Chinese challenger chips, CPUs, GPUs, those ones, and what they will do, and how that kind of integrates. Again, the sort of the population of who's using what. If China is going to be pushing out CPUs and GPUs, and specifically targeting the Chinese market, that's going to, and if it's different, then what does that mean to the overall, population of types of things that are supported out there, and popularity over time, right? We can touch upon that when we get to it.
I just do think that Windows basically starting to support ARM is kind of very telling. They must be kind of thinking, well, the wind could be blowing in a different direction now, so we've got to be ready, get in there quickly. But
yeah, I'm just saying, there's an even other wind that's hidden.
Maybe. Maybe. With that said, I think it's time to kind of park the risk conversation with the risk, pun intended, of going too long with it. Right? To move on to our next topic.
Yeah.
Okay, I think what we want to talk about next is PlayStation. Now, I've titled this one PlayStation Turning a Corner. And I kind of say that because obviously there's been a lot of negativity about what Sony and PlayStation have been doing recently. And I think we even had a topic in one of our previous podcasts that pretty much said, is PlayStation being complacent or evil?
Yep. Yep.
So, recently we've had a bit more in terms of positive news from PlayStation. We've had obviously the Ratchet and Clank gameplay trailer, which was super impressive, no doubt about that. Returnal's come out, which I think critically it's done well, but there's been a little bit of negativity around that. It's a little bit buggy. As a game, it's extremely difficult, is what I understood. But what I will say is that it's showing that Sony is willing to experiment. It's not a run-of-the-mill game. Definitely not a run-of-the-mill game. There's been information also that PlayStation Studios has... I think we're talking about first party as well. They've got 25 games in development.
Yeah.
They've reiterated that they're interested in new IPs, that sort of thing. I think they've said in between the lines that, yes, we're still about experimentation, that sort of thing. Whether that's kind of PR speak and all of that, who knows, right?
Yeah.
But it's been said.
Yeah.
PSVR 2 specs have come out, all leaked out.
Yep.
That all sounds really, really, impressive.
Yep.
Haptics, I think, on the headset, everything that we speculated about inside out tracking, all of that sort of good stuff. So seems like it's going to be a really compelling kind of VR offering.
Yeah.
PS5s, as we know, is also selling super well, even in with the circumstances the world's under. All of that sounds good. All of that sounds positive.
Yep.
You might say, what are people complaining about here? PlayStation is in excellent shape. Yeah, they're still doing their thing. But then recently, I think another interview happened. I think this was a few days ago, and this was actually after the Horizon 2 gameplay, trailer, which, let's be honest, was super, super, super impressive in my view. Super impressive.
Yep. Yep.
But we now know, as well as Horizon being cross-gen, the next God of War and the next Gran Turismo cross-gen. And I hear Gran Turismo was the decision for it to be cross-gen is a recent decision, whereas I think Horizon and maybe God of War were always intended to be cross-gen.
Yeah.
But there's been a bit of an uproar about that, and I kind of think, why? In one way. I know people are a bit disappointed because they want PS5 exclusives. They want something to show off their system, whatever it might be. But I personally can't. I don't see why Horizon can't. Couldn't be that game, or even the new God of War couldn't be that game.
Yeah.
The last God of War was so impressive that, what are you talking about? It's an impressive game. I mean, what do you want?
Yeah, and I think it's just because, again, I think similarly to kind of the earlier topic as well around some of these things, is that if it causes a delay, and if it causes fidelity type questions even to your PlayStation 5 one, then that's probably what they're worried about, and hence they're probably in a bit more of an uproar rather than, so it's like time and effort that you'd spend on the PS5 version versus PS4 and other things. So, and just getting more stuff on the PS5, I think. So no doubt they will try and complain about it, but it's a difficult one. And then obviously on the flip side is Sony just wants to be able to offer it up to a much wider market. They'd sell much more of the games because there's still a huge number of people on PlayStation 4, and like you say, it's still going to look amazing, on that platform. So why not have access to a great game on that platform?
I mean, there's still 100 million plus PS4 owners
Mm,
potentially
mm.
still playing that system.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
given that from a business perspective, Sony need to make money. You know, they're a for-profit organization,
Yeah.
but you've got 100 million PS4 owners out there.
Mm.
Are you really gonna basically, cut them off? Well, I mean, should you? I know we've done it in other generations where we've just said, okay, well, you know what, new machine, new generation. We're not gonna release the new first party titles on the old system. Yeah,
Yeah.
because really the way I see it now is continuity.
Mm.
I think now, like, I mean, these consoles being on a specific technology architecture like x86
Yeah.
plus, the AMD GPUs. Really, we got to expect this now. I
Mm.
think this is the new norm, if you ask me. I'm really kind of like not sure how people can expect that. I mean, why would you even want it? I know why they want it. Do you know what I mean?
No, it's purely a selfish one, right? It's purely, oh, I have a PS5, I want it to be just for me,
Yeah. I think
sort of
there's a
thing.
little bit. It's a little bit like this, but I mean, even if it is cross-gen, is it going to be a terrible experience? From
Mm.
what I could see of Horizon, certainly
Yeah.
not. Certainly from a graphics, fidelity, frame rate perspective, I think it's going to be very, very
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
If you're talking about something not making use of 3D audio, equally, I don't think you're going to have that problem.
Mm. Mm.
And I think people or developers could easily plumb in, DualSense support, no problem also,
Yeah.
if it's cross-gen. I think where they might struggle is if a game's been designed with the fast SSD in mind.
Mm.
For instance, Ratchet and Clank. I mean, let's actually step back, right? I mean, if the fast SSD drive, what that get you? That will give you fast load times, obviously, and we've seen that being offered in patches and whatever else. Last gen games, not a problem.
Yeah.
You'll get fast travel on maps. Again, I don't think that's
Yeah.
difficult to plumb in.
Yeah.
What might be difficult to plumb in is two things. Really, the moments that use the SSD for specific game mechanics. For instance, in Rift Apart, you see him go through a portal, almost pull it towards him. Yeah, but it's not the moments where he pulls it towards him that are really the problem. It's when he does it to get a tactical advantage.
Mm.
He will pull a rift towards him, and then he'll maneuver himself maybe,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
into position to take out an
Yep.
enemy. Clearly that's going to be difficult to replicate from,
Yep.
between the two gens. Also, if the Rift Apart developers are to be believed, and I kind of believe them, they're using the SSD to stream in assets
Mm.
really, really quickly. Let's say for seconds ahead. Let's just call it
Yep.
that, yeah.
Yep.
With the perspective of being able to use the memory they have at their disposal,
Mm.
right now, as opposed to, let's say, 30 seconds ahead.
Mm.
That'll have a implication on basically environment density, detail of the graphics and all that sort of thing.
Yep.
But in that case, if it's you could dumb it down, the quality will drop. But the reality is,
Mm.
it's those gameplay design moments that you're not going to be able to replicate.
Yeah. Yeah.
In reality, if it's an issue, damn, you might even have to give them a basic load screen. Do you know what I mean? But not for those kind
Yep.
of in-game
Yep.
moments. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
I don't really get it. There's a lot there's a lot of negativity around that, but I don't get it. Is it really the PlayStation nation? Doesn't feel like a nation. That gives a shit about one another sometimes. But I mean, like,
Yeah.
and I found that quite odd.
Exactly. Yeah. And I would say, if anything else, it probably is. It's less of an issue now, and I think it's for other things as well. When you get to multiplayer games, cross gen things like you were saying around loading times and stuff. There may be some more there, but I think in the stuff that the games that have been suggested, I think it's perfectly fine. There is going to be probably a bit of delay, but if it gets to a much wider market for what Sony needs, I think it makes
Yeah,
more
it's
sense.
kind of like gameplay elements where you just can't wait, if you know what I mean.
Mm.
You're in game, you're in mid flow. of the gameplay where you just can't wait, where that SSD comes into its own.
Yeah.
But everything else, I kind of think, can be dumbed down. In some cases, yeah.
Mm.
You know, you could basically, fortunately, unfortunately, have some sort of loading screen, or even one of those. They're almost like cutscenes where you're walking through a gap or something like to mask the fact that you're, you know, loading something or another.
Yeah.
And that might be
Yeah.
a difference that they might have to introduce. But really, you know, I'm sure people could live with that if they got the game, you know, played it on the previous generation.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if it's all said and done, I think yeah, there's been some positive news about, you know, what Sony are doing. Now half of it, let's be honest, is PR spin, and I'm wondering,
Mm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
within E3 whether we will actually get some impromptu news from them, because you know, I just
Yeah.
think to myself, it's a bit ludicrous that during E3 that they're gonna keep silent. Yeah, their continued
Mm.
silence, you know, I don't know if it doesn't make me nervous, but I just kind of wonder, well, why? If you've got something to say, say it. You know what I mean? Like, why are you saying anything? You know, it's quite an amusing thing.
Yeah. Yep. 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 Yeah. And I think it still feels a bit too early to say. I think with PlayStation, although yeah, I still think they've got a lead so far in the console wars.
I still don't know if that will really exist, but I mean, they've definitely got a lead,
Mm.
that's for sure. We know they're definitely selling more consoles than Microsoft. I think there's no doubt about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Al, with that said, now that we're thinking that PlayStation has turned that corner, it's time for us to turn that corner
Mm.
and talk a little
Yep.
bit about Xbox.
Mm-hmm.
So Al, the next topic is really about Xbox. I've titled this Xbox for the gamers. Yeah,
Yeah.
for the gamers. Question
Mm.
mark as well. Question mark. Now we know that Microsoft and Xbox have been super
Yeah.
open this generation. Lots of information coming out.
Yeah.
Super open. We also know that they're more or less, not more or less, they are definitely the backwards
Mm.
compatible kings
Yeah.
of this generation.
Mm-hmm.
That is a real thing for them. That is a real thing for them. Yeah. We also know, finally, they've admitted it. Some of these games that came with the Bethesda acquisition are exclusive. Starfield is exclusive. Should be no surprise to anybody. I don't know
Yeah.
why there's noise around it. For one thing, it's a piece of IP that doesn't exist on anything else right now. It's new. If you're gonna make anything exclusive and still maintain your openness and, you know, your I wouldn't call it a mantra, but they've talked about not wanting to take
Mm.
away games from gamers. If an IP doesn't exist on it at the moment, you're not taking
Yeah.
away
Yeah.
anything from anybody. So no surprise. But I would say just two things, right? Number one, where are the games that people are talking about?
Yeah.
Where are the games? We got Games Pass, and that's amazing value, yeah. But where are the
Mm.
games? Yeah.
Yeah.
And number two, based on what we heard in the Epic vs Apple, you know, case, right? Is Game Pass actually the video game's savior, or is it actually another threat here?
Mm.
To the first point with Xbox, you know, where are the games?
Mm.
I'm hoping that this E3, we're gonna basically kind of hear a little bit more.
Yeah.
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 You know, maybe they're gonna talk a little bit about Halo Infinite. On Games Pass,
It's it's double edged, isn't it? Because it offers such good value, and to the point at which, okay, where is all that money going to get distributed? Right? You know, who, you know, if all these players are complaining about the various stores and stuff, you know, what happens to the Game Pass offering? You know, and does it detrimentally hit their revenues that much? Don't know. And again, actually, as part of Game Pass, will they get a cut of any further in-app purchases, in-game purchases as well? And, you know, that's maybe is another thing to kind of have a look at. But I think it's on your kind of question around whether it's a savior or a threat to these sorts of things. I think it's a good thing for the consumer. Is it a threat to a consumer? I don't think so, but I think it's a threat to the way these app stores works. You could argue they're monopolies in some ways as well. But it's another venue in which things are being driven through rather than through a store. But it's a platform then, it's a service that is being offered. And maybe Xbox needs to think about, if Fortnite is offered as part of Game Pass, where does that cut go to? So, yeah, those sorts of things.
I do wonder about this because I think you brought up the last podcast. Right now, I think the share price of Netflix has dropped somewhat.
Netflix has dropped, quite
Yeah.
significantly. Yep.
I mean, what I understood was that was about profitability, yeah, because obviously Netflix has had to drop all this money to get content onto their service. Yeah, initial investment to build the business, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
But then once that's done, and I'm assuming that's ongoing anyway. Operationally, business perspective, you've got to kind of have incomings that really outweigh your outgoings.
Yeah.
That's what I understood about that.
Yeah, and then I think specifically Netflix, the main issue was the fact that the numbers and the statistics and the reports to the shareholders were showing that it felt like the numbers of subscriptions are peaking. It's getting to a point where you're not going to get many more people wanting to go onto Netflix. So that means the question is that if you're still not making money whilst you're getting to your peak, when the hell are you ever going to make money? So this is like, well, are you actually giving too much value, and that sort of thing. So it's a difficult one.
Yeah, correct. And Microsoft, being as big as they are, they can bankroll this for a long time. But there will come a point in time where they need to see some sort of return on their investment. Yeah.
Yep.
So at that point,
Yep.
what happens then? Is it going to become more expensive? Is it going to be something that basically impacts other the developers and publishers? Then then the percentage cut might change. Then it becomes less friendly.
Yep.
And I was thinking about this. This is a very insidious kind of thought, actually. But I was thinking to myself, if Microsoft can't beat Nintendo and Sony at their own game, so let's say they need to win by other means, yeah, they need to take away from their competitors by another means.
Yeah.
Is that means by offering Games Pass as cheaply as they can, where the console or the platform no longer becomes a factor, really, yeah. And by doing that, they're actually kind of bleeding Sony and Nintendo, let's say.
Yeah.
So they can't.
Definitely
So they're
possible.
not in a position where they can compete. You know what I mean? And that's a very insidious,
if you're
evil thought.
If you're playing the ultimate long game,
Yeah.
And it's a game of how long can we bleed?
Yeah. Versus them, like
they're gonna last, right?
Who's got the most blood?
And then they will be the in the sort of evil, insidious way. It would be they're the last man standing, which means then they can charge whatever they want
correct.
after that.
I wish I basically said like, is Xbox evil? That's what I should have called this. But you know what I mean? It's just kind of a thought, right? I mean, look, let's assume there is a console war going on, and Game Pass is some sort of Trojan horse into this whole thing, right? Yeah, I mean it's food for thought, but I mean, I don't think Microsoft are actually doing this, but I'm just thinking that might be the net effect of what happens as well.
Yeah. It could be.
Yeah,
it could
of
be.
them
But
being
maybe there's a rebase of it at some point when they work out that they can't continue down that model. And again, I suspect it will have to react to the Epic versus Apple thing. No doubt, there's a lot that's going to happen from that.
And it'll be it'll kind of be very, very telling if they if they get a chance to put kind of Game Pass on PlayStation and they opt not to. Then what does that mean? You know what I mean? It's just like that will really put the cat amongst the pigeons. I tell you, if that would have to happen. really, that's more wild speculation. But anyway,
Yeah, and I guess back to your first point, yeah, on the games and for the gamers, yeah, they definitely need to they definitely need to up that game if they really want to be a game offering.
yeah, I mean, it's really quite interesting. I mean, I did say some time ago. I think Games Pass is their launch title, if you like, you know.
Hmm.
But as good as Games Pass is, it's kind of boring not to have basically,
Hmm.
that game you covet.
Yeah.
Ultimately, that's what gets people's attention.
Yeah.
So, I'm hoping that changes at E3. That we'll see an exclusive that looks, amazing.
Yeah.
Gives people, certainly gives me a reason to go out and get an Xbox. But
Yeah.
right now, aside from Game Pass being amazing, which I can get on my PC, I don't have a reason. Yeah, I
Yeah.
do not have
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
reason, which is, a little bit of a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I think exactly the same. But I think for me, it also applies to PlayStation to an extent. I need that one game
Yeah.
that actually wants me to actually go and purchase one. So I've not been trying to get a PlayStation 5 because I've just not needed one. So
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair cop. I don't think I don't think there's a massive reason to get any of these consoles at the moment.
mm, mm, mm. Yeah,
I feel there's more of a reason right now to get a PS5 because
yeah, yeah,
there's a handful of titles you can get on it that you can't get elsewhere. It
yeah,
literally is a handful. Is that
yeah,
enough for you to drop at least £500 or
mm,
$500 or €500 on so you can play a handful of games? Probably not.
yeah,
Yeah, probably not.
yeah,
But again, look, time will tell. E3's coming up, and I hope the whole situation becomes crystallized. Hope kind of Xbox continues basically pushing games past because I said before, by them doing that, it's basically forcing Sony to do more. Yeah, and
mm,
Sony won't do anything unless they're putting, unless they feel threatened, they're not going to do anything.
mm-hmm,
They'll carry
mm-hmm.
on doing what they're
Yeah,
doing because we're basically we're just fueling that machine. Yeah, there's
yeah,
no other alternative. We're just gonna fuel that machine, and they're gonna carry on. Yeah, I'm hoping Xbox is for the game, and so far
yeah,
they're saying and doing the right things. But
yeah,
again, where are the games, and let's see how Games Pass develops.
yeah. Agreed.
And Al, with us basically covering if Xbox is evil for the gamers or otherwise, let's move on.
Mm.
Okay, Al. We've come to the end of the podcast. It's our
Mm.
fifth one.
Yep,
It's still enjoyable. You know,
yep.
it's still going on for too long, I reckon. And it's going to leave
Yeah.
with a lot of editing to do. But it is what it is.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
These conversations are good conversations to be having. I will ask obviously our regular questions and obviously ask you, what games are you playing and what
Mm.
tech activities are you engaging in right now?
Yeah. Pretty boring on my side. I think still on Genshin Impact, still playing that. Spending more money on it and that sort of stuff. But I'm trying to space out my time on that as much as I can. Haven't really dabbled much back onto Cyberpunk yet, but obviously, I'm hoping to get onto Mass Effect and a few other things soon when I free up a bit more time. Tech-wise, not much really. I've been obviously keeping an eye on the Computex stuff and obviously the stuff we covered kind of earlier in this podcast. And there's obviously some very interesting stuff keeping my piquing my interest around those things. And obviously, looking forward to seeing what else will kind of come out from that. And that's me really, Joe. What about yourself?
I actually got myself Hades on PC.
Mm. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's such a coveted game in multiple Game of the
Mm.
Year awards and basically just started playing that. So just begun. I
Yeah.
haven't got far at all into it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But it's interesting enough. I just need to kind of get a little bit more into it.
Yeah.
I actually bought myself and people gotta laugh, right? Because basically I've left it so late, but I actually bought myself The Last of Us 2, and
Yep. Yep.
the whole play at home initiative. Weirdly,
Mm-hmm.
you could get it for 9.99 at Game online.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
On the PlayStation Store, it's 23, £24 on discount for the
Mm-hmm.
digital one.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
My partner and my daughter don't know it, but that's my Father's Day's present that they're gonna give me. So
Yep.
that's what I did there. In terms of tech, I'm actually learning kind of Amazon Web Services. So I'm just gonna try and go
Mm-hmm.
for my certification at some point. So
Yep.
that's what
Yep.
I'm doing technically, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
actually still basically plodding away with the first God of War. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Still enjoying that actually. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I just still maintain that's a really impressive game.
Yep.
But I
Mm-hmm.
think I'm gonna be done with that quite soon. Really, it's whenever I
Yep.
can get back to it and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And with that all being said, I think it's really time for our goodbyes now. So
Mm.
it's goodbye from me, Joel. Until next time.
Yep. And it's goodbye from me, Al.
And basically, guys, whatever you're doing, please like, subscribe, and whatever else. Right. Have a stellar day.